why haven't we figured out who the leaker was, which was so unprecedented to see a leaked draft, but in a almost final form draft Supreme Court opinion on one of the biggest cases of the Supreme Court in decades.
It's been escalated that Chief Justice Roberts ordered the investigation on May 3rd, and now the Marshal Curley, a lawyer, former armored colonel, who oversees the police officers at the building. We know about they patrol the area behind our offices as well. She has now asked for the individual cell phone data of the law clerks of the Supreme Court of the United States. It's a big move.
I think they're also asking for affidavits with respect to the law clerks and what they did. Now, the marshal does not have criminal investigative powers. The marshal
cannot issue a subpoena,
no,
correct?
Cannot issue a subpoena, cannot compel the production as a grand jury can or as a United States attorney can. I'm not sure what the federal offense is here, if there is one, or if it's just an ethics violation. But people's jobs are particularly possibly at stake here. But it's a major investigation, and it should be done.
A bunch of law clerks are about to lawyer up.
Yes, they're talking about that.
And if they do that and they don't have the same kind of authority, do they ultimately then have to go to, if they want to figure this out, of who was responsible?
They have to go to the FBI?
Yeah, I mean, really...
I mean, if the clerks refuse to give their phones or the data...
the clerks because of that.
I guess. I guess.
Sure, they can.
I think they have the right to fire the clerks for whatever reason.
I think the justice or the chief justice
I suspect
can
the
tell.
justices don't like that this is going on.
I don't think they would. No.
I mean, so the marshal. What's the marshal going to do? Question the justices?
Breaking news, kind of news we expected. I know we didn't get a lot of predicting juries, but this was news out of the Durham trial, which again I think sheds light on where where their mindset is. They did not have a good jury pool. They had issues with the judge who had connections to the FBI. And Sussman has been found not guilty.
I called this last week. I said that I thought that he would be found not guilty because I don't think that the government was able to establish beyond a reasonable doubt the mens rea, the specific intent for this process crime. And all this is a process crime.
Those are not easy cases to prove. You have to prove willfulness, intent, knowing. You've got to show criminality on the part of the speaker, and you have to also show that it is material, that something significant other than just a false statement was made.
No one is just saying whether or not this was true or not.
It was just they were not able to prove criminal intent.
We know that Hillary Clinton said release it to the media. They did not testify on the record that she said go to the FBI. No one had that information, right. So people asked about that. But it's kind of like how much dirty tricks and campaigns do we allow in the U.S. before it's really considered criminal? And this, I think, case underscores it.
There's a report that President Biden will be heading to Israel. He plans specifically to visit East Jerusalem. A lot of people, and I'm one of those, are concerned that this is a calculated move intended to signal support for a divided Jerusalem because of the Palestinians' continued assistance.
The feeling is that we're turning back the clock to the terrible days under Obama and Biden. There's a lot of fear that it's going to go back to, once again, trying to rip this city in half. And when the president of the United States comes here, where he goes, with whom he goes, what he does, sends messages that have powerful impact around the region and around the world. If President Biden does this, as I say, the implications are to rip it in half. And it seems that's what he intends.
The Biden administration has had a very tough time. I think that's a good thing, getting back into what they want is the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Part of that tough time is because the Russians are directly involved with it. They don't want to necessarily give the U.S. or the Biden administration a win. And they were also the go-between between the U.S. and Iran. So there's issues there. But I think Israel wants to pile on and make sure while you've got this moment that you don't have some out of nowhere that they announce, oh, we've rejoined this deal. So they've released this new cache of documents going back to 2003 and 2004. That's a decade, more than a decade before the deal ever came together, Rick, where the Iranians now took IAEA documents to figure out how they could cover up their covert nuclear operations.
This information was a treasure trove of really smoking guns, showing how the Iranian regime was lying and evading the IAEA. Now, the interesting part is that we told the IAEA at the time, and it was really hard to get them to understand the political implications of what they were seeing. Remember, that the inspectors are scientists. They don't carry guns. They're not people that go into rooms when they're not allowed to go into rooms. They are literally scientists that are looking for scientific evidence of what the Iranian regime is up to when it comes to their nuclear weapons programs.
The Biden administration knows this. They know that this history of lying, they know this history of cover-up. Now, Naftali Bennett, as I said, is laying it out there. Despite all of that, they're desperate for an arrangement. Now, they may not be able to get it because of what's happened in Russia and Ukraine. But the fact of the matter is, until then, they were desperate through these, third-party intermediaries, governments, to get this resolved.
The worst part about this is the dangerous aspect of allowing the Iranian regime to get weapons. Now, what the Obama team and now the Biden team are trying to say is, but if we're all united against them, then we can stop them going into the rooms. And I say, no, because the UN is not an agency that is ever going to have guns and force their way into areas to inspect. And that's why Naftali Bennett's find, where he shows that the Iranians knew where the IAEA wanted to go, was so valuable, because they knew what they were up against and they just closed areas. We even had one point in 2003 where they brought in dump trucks and literally covered over an area that would have shown a weapons grade program, but they covered it up with dirt, and we saw them and we had all the evidence and nobody cared.
That's exactly why we filed the Freedom of Information Act request on the meeting with Zarif and former Biden administration officials. During the Trump administration, we want to know. That's why we are prepared to go to court.
And it shows how committed they are. Even when they were out of government, they were so committed. After President Trump had removed us from this deal, the U.S. too, these U.S. officials who are back in office now were committed to getting back to this deal. And they were obsessed. They were kind of obsessive over the deal.
Yep.
And so they went to go meet behind the back of the Trump administration, go meet with the Iranian ambassador at his residence in New York, as it says, in 2018, to talk through these issues in case they come back to power.